right, we are back. Brent?
I think D&D needs to go home. They're drunk. God, it was a terrible joke.
It was pretty terrible. All right. So we did see a cruiser setup work. Why did it work this time?
They were right on top of all their targets right away. We saw, like, with the Heretic team, they had to run across the field and lost a bunch of people on the way.
Mm-hmm. And also they committed more fully, like by bringing no Logi and bringing, like, they almost filled all 12 with damage cruisers or bigger. And that, I think, is better than kind of going halfway.
With the exception of a Kitsune, and actually that worked out pretty because it looked like he got a successful jam off on the Vindicator at the beginning. So that made a huge difference for the first 20 seconds of the fighter. So,
word up.
Would it have gone differently if you hadn't gone that one up?
Maybe. I don't think it would have made enough of a difference, though.
Yeah,
if he didn't get the jam cycle, no, I don't think it would have made it. No, I mean, they had too many eggs in one basket. Once the two Vindicators were dead, they had pretty much nothing. So, no, I don't think it would have made much of a difference at all.
When your team can melt a Vindicator in like 5 seconds and the Vindicator start on top of you, your team does well.
Another big thing they had going for them here is they had a lot of tracking disruption, which is something like old cruiser, full team cruiser comps used to do that a lot, bring a lot of tracking disruptors, and against this setup, it's really strong. If they'd have been against, Navy Scorps or Dommies or something, they might have had a slightly harder time. But like if it would have been like Missile Tinker or something, that would have tanked better, and they wouldn't have been able to mitigate as much damage.
And it probably would have come in at 50.
Yeah.
That would have been rough.
Yeah, they'd probably lose then.
I honestly think there's very few scenarios where warping in at 0 is a good idea because it takes away a lot of options. You don't always want to be at 0, even if you're in Vindicators. It's not always the best thing.
I don't know.
It's funny because before the break, we were talking about exactly the same thing, right? You virtually never want to be at 0 unless you're hunter loaded and you want to lose your frigates so the rest of the team can do work.
Yeah.
I think maybe it could be like cut back to say, don't be at 0 just because your ships do damage at close range.
Yeah.
Like that's not a good enough reason maybe, but.
I mean, it feels unintuitive, right?
Yes.
Like you want to be as close as possible, but you don't go to 0.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're coming up against, and it takes away all positional options that you might gain by coming in at 20 or 30.
Are there any setups that the cruiser comp here doesn't want to come in at 0 against?
Not that I can think of.
Not that I can think of, but I think that's a fringe case. Like that's not your atypical tournament comp.
Said never.
Okay, all right.
I do think there's going to be plenty of options where you do, like putting the frigs in at 0 for Hun was really smart, putting the cruiser in at 0 for Obsidian, really smart. In this case, though, the Vindies coming in at, say, 20. At that point, you'd actually burn away. The cruisers would probably arrive a little bit staggered. It'd help out with that DPS. And your Vindies are doing extra damage in that range, too. So.
It seems like there's at least some section of matches where battleships that want to be close, like Cronoses and Vindicators and stuff, wind up not wanting to start close. Like that's something that keeps happening where people come in at 0 and wind up not wanting to be, but I think there's plenty of other situations where.
I'd actually say it would be very, very rare that you'd want Vindies at 0.
Yeah.
Well, last year
compared to say 20.
Last year, Verge, they would bring battleships in at range all the time, and they use it to be able to spread things out.
Yep.
You can tackle things on the way in to where you can take big ships, tackle them off in the back so they're by themselves, they're not applying damage, let the little ships through, kill them. Then when you have room to move, you can commit to the fight. I just think there's a lot of tactical options that you gain by not coming in at 0. But in something like, basically just a chainsaw setup like they just brought, as much DPS as we can right at 0, like that's good for them. But it was good for them because the Vindies came in at 0.
Yeah, it's in that case, if the Vindies had come in at 20, then coming in at 0 compared to 20 wouldn't have actually really helped the cruisers much. Either way, they would have been kind of screwed, or would have been in rough shape. But the fact that they had their target in at 0 made it really good. And so that, in that case, gambling is definitely worthwhile because you don't lose much.
Yeah. All right, so the next match is almost ready. We do have the stats on the screen, though. Let's see if there's anything interesting with these, again, relatively small alliances.
The guys at No Holes Barred have, I think, just kind of absent-mindedly mispronounced them to No Holds Barred, or maybe they just heard us wrong. I don't even remember how it was said, but they were a little bit offended by that, so I want to make it clear that their name is No Holes Barred. And one of the wormhole lines.
Want to be really respectful about pronouncing their name, Solar Fleet,
but not Solar. No.
Forget it.
But I mean, I tend to kind of want to make these names a little bit more respectable. So I always refer to them as no wormholes barred from exploration in your spaceship on TQ. Just to make sure that we all know
You don't
what
want to have
we're
any
talking
misunderstanding.
That's,
yeah,
that's
it's very
entirely
important.
So Statistica is actually a not shit tier, low sec corp that lives out in solitude.
about. Yes.
And we've actually bumped into them, and every time
Yeah.
every time we fight on their terms, they beat us. And
Yeah.
we don't lose very often. But.
I agree. They're a non-shipped here alliance out there in low sec.
We're getting rid of ship
we-
tiers. Did you know?
That's absolutely true. All right, we are ready. Who do you think is going to win?
I'm going to go with no holes barred.
Sadistica.
I have no idea. No holes barred, I think.
No holes barred for wormhole exploration on Tranquility is my bet as well.